Across the globe. Welcome to the webinar today. I'm Sharon Kell, and I'm trained as an internist and geriatrician with an MPH in epidemiology. I trained at the University of Alabama and was an assistant professor of medicine for 7 years, where I practiced medicine, taught, and conducted research. Since then, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for over 25 years, holding positions at Novartis as Scientific Director of Med Affairs, J&J as Director of Medical Affairs and Senior Director of Clinical R&D, Impax Pharmaceuticals as VP Clinical R&D, and also Medical Affairs and Pharmacovigilance and Drug Safety. At Amneal Pharmaceuticals, I was VP of Drug Safety, and at Prevention, I was SVP of Clinical Development. Currently, I am managing my own consulting business. The topic for today's webinar is navigating the complexity of PSURs and PSURs. In the post-authorization phase, the safety profile of every medicinal product must be communicated to regulators through structured periodic reporting. These reports go far beyond a compliance requirement. They play a central role in evaluating the evolving benefit-risk profile of a product. A careful and thoughtful assessment of new and emerging safety data is therefore essential to ensure patient safety and maintain regulatory confidence. Awenza's team combines strong regulatory understanding with extensive practical experience. In this webinar, we will share practical approaches and insights to help develop periodic safety reports that are both robust and inspection ready. In this webinar today, Magda Chopra, Sanjeev Miklani, and Shruti Mehrotra will talk in detail about the management of PSURs and PSURs. At the onset, I need to cover a few housekeeping topics. You're welcome to post your questions during the webinar. We will do our level best to address the questions. In case we are not able to answer your questions due to time constraints on the webinar, we will try to respond to you via email. This webinar will be available for download on demand after a couple days. Before I ask Magda to start today's presentation, I would like to give her a brief introduction. Dr. Magda Chopra is the co-founder and director of Awenza Life Sciences and has over 20 years of experience, including pharmacovigilance and clinical research. She was an associate vice president for USPV and clinical safety at APSR in her last role, and was overseeing the delivery and operations from India, which included but not limited to case processing, aggregate reporting, literature monitoring, and signal detection. Before joining APSR, she was with Ranbaxy as a compliance lead in the Department of Med Affairs and Pharmacovigilance. She comes with an extensive experience in various safety databases like Argus Safety and ARIS-G for case processing reporting and product license management, and has also met the challenges of business continuity planning and data restoration. At this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to Magda to start today's presentation.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for the nice introduction. Good morning, good evening, everyone. In the webinar today, we will be talking about PSURs and PSURs. I'll be speaking on periodic adverse drug experience reports, and Dr. Sanjeev Miklani and Shruti Mehrotra will be giving an in-depth insight on the periodic safety update reports. We'll be covering the following topics in today's webinar: objectives of periodic reports, principles and regulations of PSURs, and the sectional review of PSURs, which I'll be talking about. Dr. Miklani and Shruti will walk us through the regulations and sectional review of PSURs. Before I start my presentation, I would like to lay down the principles why any periodic report is required to be submitted. From safety perspective, comprehensive and critical analysis of the evolving information on the risks and benefits must be identified and reported. All of this is clearly reflected in the aggregate reports, which are required to be prepared as part of the pharmacovigilance requirements. Aggregate reports are the reports which emphasize on the evaluation of safety profile and benefit risk. So aggregate reports, so as to say, is a process which reviews the cumulative safety information from a wide range of sources on a periodic basis and submit the findings to the regulatory authorities. Aggregate reports are required both during the pre-marketing and the post-marketing stages of a product. PSURs and PSURs are the aggregate reports prepared during the post-marketed stages of the product. As we are progressing in PV, it's all about evaluation of risks at the periodic intervals and presenting them in specific formats as defined by the regulations in different countries. So we have to highlight the risks or relevant new safety information of the product. Another important objective is to establish whether information recorded during the reporting period is in accordance with the previously existing knowledge of the drug safety and helps determine whether any changes should be made to the product labeling. The most important objective of periodic reports is to evaluate the benefit risk profile of the approved medicinal products in the light of new or changing post-approval information. There are different regulations or guidelines governing the preparation and submission of periodic adverse drug experience reports in the US. 21 CFR 314.80, that is post-marketing reporting of adverse drug experiences for new drug applications. Similarly, there is 21 CFR 314.98, which is for the post-marketing reports for the generic drugs. Post-marketing reporting of adverse experiences for biologics is detailed in 21 CFR 600.80. And as we all know, we have a draft guidance document published by FDA in March 2001 regarding the post-marketing safety reporting for human drugs and biological products. This guidance document provides the details regarding the format requirements and content of the PSURs to be submitted to the US FDA. As I mentioned in the beginning, that there are different timelines and frequency of submission of the periodic reports based on the regulatory reporting requirements in different countries. Post-marketing marketed periodic reports are required to be submitted to the FDA for each approved NDA, ANDA, and BLA, and are due quarterly for the first 3 years after US approval of the application and annually thereafter. Periodic reports due quarterly must be submitted within 30 calendar days of the last day of the reporting quarter. Reports due annually must be submitted each year within 60 calendar days of the anniversary date of the US approval of the application of the drug or the biological product. Now, each page of the periodic report should be numbered and include the name and the NDA or the ANDA number if the periodic report is for the drug product. For the biologics, the periodic report should include the name and submission tracking number, that is STN, of the biological product. Before I go into the sectional review of the PSURs, I would like to highlight few regulatory aspects of PSURs. So the initial non-15-day alert report, non-15-day reports should be included in the periodic report in a separate section from the non-15-day follow-up reports. All initial and follow-up information obtained for an adverse experience with a given periodic reporting period should be combined and submitted in the periodic report as one initial non-15-day report. This means that an initial non-15-day report and a non-15-day follow-up report describing the same adverse experience should not be submitted in the same periodic report. So when I say non-15-day reports for submission in PSURs, these include spontaneously reported cases originating in the US, that is serious listed cases, non-serious listed cases, and non-serious unlisted cases. Serious listed and non-serious cases coming from literature or any country other than the US are not required to be included in the PSUR. Another important point, and which makes sense as well, is that serious unexpected adverse experience reports should not be reported to the US FDA again as E2B report via ESG gateway along with the PSUR, as these should have been previously submitted to the FDA as 15-day report. Non-15-day reports, that is domestic spontaneous serious listed and non-serious cases, are the only reports which are required to be submitted as E2B reports via ESG gateway along with the payder. If no adverse experiences were identified for the human drug or the product for the time period involved, and no regulatory actions concerning safety were taken anywhere in the world where the product is marketed, the periodic report can state this and be submitted to the FDA along with a copy of the current US labeling. Now, there are certain waivers that FDA grants to the applicant holders for the payders, and one of the waivers is submission of FDA form 3500A for non-serious expected adverse experiences, or we can say submission of non-serious expected adverse experiences as E2B reports to the US FDA along with the payder, as you know, we no longer submit the MedWatch forms to the FDA. All the submissions to the FDA are now going electronically. And for the guidance from US FDA, FDA has already started accepting E2B R3 format of the reports for the ICSRs. So the expected adverse experience, the applicants are encouraged to request a waiver for submission of the individual case safety reports of non-serious expected adverse experiences that at least contain 4 basic elements. In such cases, applicants should maintain records of these non-serious expected adverse experiences in their safety database, and whenever agency expect them to submit, they should be submitted within 5 calendar days after the receipt of the request. And applicants who obtain this waiver for the requirement to submit ICSRs of non-serious expected adverse experiences would still be expected to submit information of these adverse experiences to the FDA in the summary tabulation section of the payder. It's not that they're not going to be submitted. The individual reports are not going to be submitted, but summary tabulation still has to be included. The FDA does not intend to grant waiver requests for new biological molecular entities within 1 year of licensure or for blood products, plasma derivatives, or vaccines. And FDA believes that it is important to continue periodic review of all ICSRs of adverse experiences for these products to identify safety problems due to lot-to-lot variations, and also to monitor the safety of newly approved biological products. There can also be a waiver which is granted for submission of payders in the PSUR format. Applicant holders can request a waiver to submit the payders in PSUR format as described in ICH E2C. However, in these situations, FDA expects certain additional requirements to be followed by the applicant holders, which are if all dosage forms and formulations for active substance as well as indications are combined in one PSUR, this information should be separated into specific sections of the report when such separation is appropriate to accurately portray the safety profile of the specific dosage forms. For example, information from ophthalmic drop dosage forms and solid oral dosage forms should not be combined. And another requirement is that one copy of the PSUR should be submitted for each approved NDA or ANDA whose product is covered in the PSUR. The non-15-day cases that are required to be by the regulations in payders are required to be submitted, even if the waiver is granted for this kind of format. So the summary tabulation should be included as an appendix listing all spontaneously reported US ICSRs from consumers if such cases are not already included in PSUR. And summary tabulation should be presented by a body system of all adverse experiences and counts of occurrences, and be segregated by the type, that is, the serious listed or serious unexpected or non-serious cases. They should be segregated separately in the summary tabulation. Again, in this kind of format as well, the narrative should be included as an appendix that references the changes to the approved US labeling for the dosage forms covered by the PSUR based on new information in the PSUR. A copy of the most recently approved US labeling for the product covered by PSUR should be included. Now, another waiver is regarding the submission date and the frequency of the reports if submitted in the PSUR format. As far as the submission for payders is concerned, these are submitted on a quarterly basis from the US approval date of the product. So applicants can request a waiver to submit PSURs to the FDA based on the month and the day of the international birthday of the product instead of the month and the day of anniversary date of US approval of the product. The waiver request should specify that these PSURs would be submitted to the FDA within 60 calendar days of the data lock point, that is, month and the day of the IBD of the product, or any other day agreed on by the applicant and the FDA. The regulations require a PADER to contain the information like the narrative summary and analysis of the information in the report and an analysis of 15-day alert report submitted during the reporting period, and the non-15-day reports for each spontaneously reported adverse experience occurring in the United States that was not reported in a 15-day alert report. It should also include a history of actions taken since the last report because of adverse experiences. The information contained within a post-marketing periodic report should be divided into 4 sections and should be clearly separated by an identifying tab. And if information for one of the sections is not included or it does not have the data, the applicant should simply explain why the information is not being provided. These are different sections of the PADER. The PADER format, as expected by the US FDA as per these regulations, should contain 4 sections. Section 1 is the narrative summary and analysis. Section 2 being narrative discussions of action taken. Section 3 is index line listing, and Section 4 is FDA Form 3500A, that is non-15-day cases included in the PADER. There are certain appendices also which are to be included in the PADER, and I'll be talking about all these different sections along with the appendices in my subsequent slides as well. Now, Section 1 is the narrative summary and analysis, which should include a narrative summary and analysis of the information in the PADER and analysis of 15-day alert reports, that is, serious, unexpected adverse experiences submitted during the reporting period. This section should include the information about the number of non-15-day initial adverse experience reports and the number of non-15-day follow-up reports contained in the PADER and the time period covered by the report. The non-15-day cases cover serious expected, non-serious unexpected, and non-serious expected cases, which are reported spontaneously and that too specifically in the US. Any serious expected case or non-serious case which are reported in literature or any such spontaneous case with country of origin other than the US, that is foreign case, they are not required to be included in the PADER. This section should also include the list of 15-day reports submitted to the FDA during the reporting period and 15-day reports submitted under the particular NDA or ANDA or BLA can be from any report source, that is spontaneous literature or clinical trial, and it can be domestic or it can be foreign as well. This line listing of 15-day reports, which is a part of the PADER line listing generated from the safety database, should include the manufacturer report number, which is the unique identification number for that particular case, adverse experience term, and the date the 15-day report was submitted to the US FDA. If both initial and follow-up reports were submitted to the FDA during the current reporting period, both the submission data should get reflected in the PADER line listing. There is another list of cases which need to be included in Section 1 of the PADER, that is the list for the cases submitted to the FDA under another NDA or ANDA or BLA. This list includes the cases in which the suspect drug or the biological product for which the PADER is being prepared was listed as one of the suspect products, but the report was submitted to the US FDA under another license number of the applicant holder. This generally occurs when there are multiple suspect products and the suspect product for which we are preparing the PADER is one of the suspect product, but not the one for which the report was submitted to the US FDA. In case there is no such case, it should be clearly specified in the report that no such case exists for this particular section of the PADER. Now, this section should also include, Section 1, should also include the tabulation of the events by the system organ class. Just to make it very clear, tabulation is always at the event level and the listings are at the case level, and this is applicable both for the PADERs and the PSURs. So the summary tabulation by body system of all adverse experience terms and counts of occurrences submitted during the reporting period should be included in this section. And this information should be taken from 15-day reports submitted to FDA, non-15-day reports submitted in the periodic report, reports forwarded to the applicant by the FDA, and any non-serious expected adverse experience not submitted to the FDA but maintained on file by the applicant in case applicant has a waiver for the report. For the adverse experience term product interaction, the interacting products should be identified in the tabulation. So this section should include the narrative discussion of the 15-day alert reports. This is another point, which should be highlighted, which is the difference between the PSURs and the PSURs. So PSURs require the detailed discussion of all 15-day alert cases in the PSUR report. However, for PSURs, detailed discussion is required for only those cases which are considered to be, of the relevant safety concern. This section of PSUR includes the narrative discussion of the clinical significance of 15-day alert reports submitted during the reporting period and of any increased reporting frequency of serious expected adverse experiences when, in the judgment of the applicant, it is believed that the data reflect a clinically meaningful change in adverse experience occurrences. So this narrative section should assess clinical significance by type of adverse experience, body system, and overall product safety relating the new safety information received during the reporting period and to to what was already known about the product. So the narrative discussion should indicate, based on the information learned during the reporting period, whether the applicant believes that no change in the product's current approved labeling is warranted, or there are safety-related issues that need to be addressed in the approved product labeling. And if changes in the approved product labeling are under consideration by the FDA, date and the number of the supplemental application submitted to the address of labeling should be stated in this particular section. Now comes section 2. Section 2 is in the PSUR is the narrative discussion of actions taken, and this section should include a copy of the current US product labeling, a list of any labeling changes made during the reporting period, and the labeling changes to be mentioned in this section should be ones relevant from safety perspective, the list of studies initiated, the summary tabulation or summary of important foreign regulatory actions, and any communication of new safety information, that is, for example, a Dear Doctor letter. So section 2 should also include the summary of important regulatory actions, including foreign, for example, any new warnings or limitations in the indications and use of the product. And this should also include any communications of new safety information, for example, a Dear Doctor letter. Another very important information to be included in section 2 is the list of studies initiated by the company during the reporting period, and this includes the company's sponsored trials, which are focused on safety, with a brief narrative describing any safety trials or epidemiological studies initiated in response to any significant new information that might affect the safety of the product. This section just needs the brief summary of all the studies. Now comes the section 3. Section 3 of the PSUR is the index line listing. So the index line listing included in section 3 or section 4 of the PSUR, the line listing for each non-15-day case submitted should include a manufacturer report number, adverse experience term, and identification of interacting products for any product interaction listed as an adverse experience. This section is subdivided into different subparts, which is the list of serious listed initial reports, non-serious unlisted and non-serious listed initial reports. Then there are follow-up reports which also have to be included in this index line listing, which has a serious listed follow-up reports or non-serious unlisted and non-serious listed follow-up reports. Then is section 4. Section 4 of the PSUR, though named as FDA Form 3500A as per the guidance document, but includes a list of spontaneously reported adverse experiences that occurred in United States during the reporting period, that is serious expected, non-serious unexpected, and non-serious expected. So the applicants are encouraged to request a waiver of the requirement to submit individual case safety reports of non-serious expected adverse experiences for drugs and certain biological products, and adverse experiences due to failure to produce the expected pharmacological action, that is lack of efficacy, should also be included in this section. Now, this slide, the last slide of my presentation, the slide shows different appendices for the PSUR. One of the appendices is the PSUR line listing, which includes a list of 15-day reports by system organ class submitted to the FDA, cases sent to FDA under another product license or another NDA or ANDA. So PSUR line listing should also include tabulation by system organ class for all the events reported, And then again, index line listing for the list of serious listed and non-serious cases, both initial and follow-ups. And appendices should also include the current labeling of the particular product for which the paid order is being submitted. So that is all which I have for today. I will now request Dr. Sanjeev Meglani to talk about the periodic safety update reports. But before I hand over the stage to Dr. Meglani, I would like to briefly introduce him. Dr. Sanjeev Meglani is the founder and director of Avinsa Life Sciences with an MD in internal medicine and over 24 years of experience in medicine, pharmacovigilance, and clinical research. He is a seasoned leader with extensive expertise in safety evaluation and clinical analysis, known for his methodical and precise approach in pharmacovigilance. Throughout his distinguished career, he has held senior leadership roles, including vice president's position at Absor and Accenture, and key positions at CIDV Biotech, CliniRx, and Ranbaxy. His professional journey began as a senior resident in cardiology and internal medicine. Dr. Meglani continues to actively contribute to the field through speaking engagements and international forums and publications in reputed medical journals and books. Dr. Sanjeev, the floor is all yours, please.
Thank you, Mukta, for this nice introduction. So today I will discuss the fundamental goals and the principles of PSURs, and I'll provide an overview of the sectional review process. Shruti will also talk about some of the sections of PSUR. And firstly, it is important to understand the key objectives of PSUR. The primary purpose of any PSUR, regardless of the regulatory authority involved, is to provide a comprehensive, concise, and critical analysis of the risk-benefit balance of a medicine product. And this analysis takes into consideration both new or emerging safety information and cumulative data on risk and benefit. So as a marketing authorization holder, every company must continuously assess the benefit risk profile of the product. And this assessment involves collaboration between the signaling team responsible for identifying the potential risk and the medical writing team which prepares the PSUR. So all the relevant signaling data and the risk benefit assessments conducted by the signaling team should be included in the PSUR. Essentially, the PSUR serves as an evaluation tool at various time points. A very important thing is that the information should not be duplicated within sections within PSUR. And another important point is regarding the format and the content of the PSUR. So in the European Union, the PSURs follow the guidelines provided in the GBP of Module 7. And this module outlines the various sections and structures to be included in the PSUR. The format of the PSUR aligns with the requirements specified in ICH E2C R2 guideline. It's very important to highlight that in order to enhance the efficient utilization of resources among different regulatory authorities in EU member states, a single assessment of PSUR is conducted for medicinal products that contain the same active substance or a combination of active substances authorized in multiple member states. So this assessment is practically based on a union reference date and the frequency of PSUR submissions that have been established. So the EMA provides a legally binding list of union reference dates and the submission frequencies. So from the perspective of the European Union, the GBP Module 7 provides a clear guidelines on the frequency and timelines for the PSUR submission. And according to these guidelines, the PSUR must be submitted to the regulatory authorities within 70 calendar days of the data log point for PSURs covering intervals up to 12 months. And if the interval is, say, exactly 12 months, the same 70-day timeline applies. However, if the reporting period or the interval, say, exceeds 12 months, then the PSUR must be submitted within 90 calendar days of the data log point. Now, it's very important to note that the regulatory authorities may request PSUR as per their specific requirements. And in such scenarios, the PSUR should be generally submitted within 90 calendar days of the data log point. In fact, like the GP Module 7 highlights important principles for the evaluation of the benefit risk profile within the PSUR. And one critical principle or the crucial principle is that the benefit risk assessment of any medicinal product should be conducted throughout its entire life cycle. So this evaluation aims to promote and safeguard public health while enhancing patient safety through the effective management of the risk. So it's very important to continue assessing the benefits and risk of the medicinal products even after marketing authorization has been granted by the regulatory authorities. So this ongoing evaluation basically ensures that the risk-benefit profile remains favorable over time. The scope of benefit information considered in this evaluation should encompass both data from the clinical trials and, of course, the real-world data obtained during post-authorization phase in the approved indication. And by incorporating the real-world evidence, the assessment basically provides a comprehensive understanding of the product's effectiveness and safety in a real-world setting. Now, when it comes to the EU PSURs, relevant data pertaining to a specific indication, structure, dosage, form, route of administration, or dosing regimen should be presented in separate sections of the PSUR, and each aspect should be appropriately addressed within the report. So, in general, a single PSUR is required for a medicinal product or active ingredient in EU. So, this single PSUR should cover all the dosages, formulations, and routes of administration. Now, unlike in the US, as Dr. Mukta explained, where separate payers may be required for different populations or different areas, you follow the principle of a single comprehensive PSUR. However, of course, there can be exceptions to the rule. For example, if there's an entirely different formulation for a distinct indication, and the marketing authorization holder provides a rationale that a separate PSUR may be allowed. And it is important to note that any exceptions or separate PSUR should be agreed upon with the relevant regulatory or competent authority in the EU during the authorization process. Also, in the EU PSURs, case narratives are typically required only when there is a significant signal or an important event that is relevant from a safety perspective. So these case narratives should not be presented as raw data directly. Basically, the aim is to provide a clinically meaningful picture by presenting a cohesive picture of the case. And the idea is to convey the relevant information in a way that is understandable and valuable for the assessment of the safety. Also, each PSUR should include both the interval data and the cumulative data. The interval data pertains to a specific reporting period covered by the PSUR, while the cumulative data encompasses all the relevant safety information accumulated over time. So this comprehensive presentation of data allows for a thorough, meaningful evaluation of the safety profile of the medicinal product. Now, I would like to highlight an important aspect of the periodic report, which is like the RSI, or the reference safety information. This RSI plays a very significant role in various reports such as PSURs, DSURs, or any periodic report. So the RSI is essentially a part of the company core data sheet, which contains the company's core safety information. And within the CCDS, there are specific sections that are particularly important from an RSI perspective. These sections include adverse events, contraindications, warnings and precautions, pregnancy and lactation, drug interactions and overdose. And these sections practically contain critical safety information that must be carefully reviewed and considered in the PSUR or any periodic report. Additionally, there is a section in the report that addresses any change in the RSI. So if there are any specific changes to the aforementioned sections like adverse events or contraindication or warnings and pregnancy and lactation drug interaction, it is important to appropriately address these changes in the PSUR or other periodic reports. Now, every MAH should have a robust quality systems and procedures in place to ensure that the PSURs are prepared appropriately. Well, there should be quality checks and controls, and that should be implemented across all the levels of processes, including the maintenance of the RSI and the overall report preparation. At the same time, it is essential to have the well-defined and documented policies and procedures within the quality system. These policies and procedures should clearly outline the processes involved in the preparation of the PSURs and the maintenance of RSI. Furthermore, the quality system should establish effective communication and coordination between multiple stakeholders involved in the PSUR process. So this includes the collaboration between the relevant departments within the organization, such as PV, medical writing, regulatory affairs, and the quality assurance. And ensuring appropriate coordination among these stakeholders help to maintain the quality and the integrity of the PSUR. The responsible person for PV or the QPPV for PV plays a very important role in ensuring that the staff members involved in the PSUR activities are trained regularly and appropriately. So it is important to have a qualified and experienced personnel in pharmacovigilance, medical writing, QC team, quality control team, who are involved in the review and quality assurance process. of the PSUR. The QPPV should ensure that all the relevant personnel have received adequate training and their training records are appropriately documented. These training records serve as an evidence that the required training has been completed or prior to engaging in the PSUR activity. These reports are, or the records, I mean, are important not only from the internal perspective, but also for audits conducted by any kind of regulatory authority such as MHRA or USFDA or European audits. So having a well documented training record demonstrate compliance with the regulatory requirements and showcase the competency and qualification of the individuals involved in the preparation and review of the periodic reports. So the PSUR consists of these various sections that you see. Of course, we'll walk you through these sections one by one. And the main objective of both the types of periodic reports, whether prepared for the US or EU, is to assess and infer any new signals or changes in the benefit profile of the medicinal product. And while the specific details of the sections may vary based on the regulation, the ultimate goal of any periodic report or any aggregate report for that matter is to provide a conclusion regarding the impact on the benefit risk profile or any new signals that may impact the safety profile of the product. So I've highlighted the key elements that should be included in the executive summary of a periodic report here. And the purpose of the executive summary is to provide a concise overview of the report's content and convey the most important information. The executive summary should begin with a brief introduction and provide essential details about the medicinal product, such as its therapeutic class, mechanism of action, indication, pharmaceutical formulation. It should, of course, include the information on the estimated cumulative exposure if product is still undergoing the clinical trials. It's also important to note at the same time that the safety information from the clinical trials should be included in the PSUR, and this information should be relevant and aligned with the overall safety perspective of the report. So the executive summary should also present the estimated interval as well as the cumulative post-marketing exposure data. So practically this executive summary serves as a concise snapshot of the periodic report, providing an overview of the important safety information and the key aspects of the product's benefit risk profile. In the introduction section of the periodic report, the important details should be highlighted. You can see on the screen like the international birth date, which refers to the date when the product receives its initial marketing authorization. Reporting period, which is the period covered by the specific periodic report, like which is basically going to cover the safety information for that period. And the brief description of the approved indication should provide a concise overview of the approved indication for the medicinal product, including details about the target population for its use. The medicinal product information section should include information about the medicinal product itself, such as a mode of action, therapeutic class, dose, and route of administration. And these details help provide a comprehensive understanding of the product being evaluated. So normally a single PSUR is required for active moiety, as we discussed. However, in some cases, multiple PSURs may be submitted based on a prior agreement with the competent authority. Section 2 that you see right now on the screen is the worldwide marketing authorization approval status. And this section basically consists of multiple things. Date of first authorization is basically the date when the product receives its initial marketing authorization worldwide. Then we have to mention about the worldwide indications. It should provide a comprehensive list of indications for which the product has been authorized in different countries worldwide. The authorized countries should be specifically mentioned, and the purpose of the overall section is to provide an overview of the worldwide MA status of the product and highlight the breadth of the approved indications and authorized countries. Practically, it helps in demonstrating the global reach and acceptance of the product in the various regulatory jurisdictions. The section which is action taken in the reporting period for safety reasons is again a very important part of the PSUR, and this section highlights any significant actions that have been taken during the reporting interval from a safety perspective. So the actions should be described for both post-marketing and the clinical trial setting. As far as the post-marketing actions are concerned, any actions taken globally in relation to the post-marketing safety should be described. So this includes actions such as withdrawal or suspension of the marketing authorization due to safety reasons, product recalls or withdrawals, and any kind of risk management activities implemented to address the safety concern. As far as the clinical trial actions are concerned, any actions related to clinical trials should be included. This can involve actions like refusal to authorize the clinical trial, partial or complete clinical trial suspension, early termination of ongoing trials due to safety findings or lack of efficacy, and failure to obtain marketing authorization for a tested indication. Then in the section on changes to RSI, which is again a very important part of PSUR, it should focus on any changes made to any specific sections of RSI that are relevant from a safety perspective. And these sections include warning, precautions, contraindications, adverse event experiences, drug interactions. And in this section, any changes made to the specific sections of RSA should be clearly documented. And this includes any kind of updates, revisions, additions, deletions made to the information provided in these sections. And the section 5 on the estimated exposure and use pattern provides information about the extent of patient exposure to the medicinal product. And this section is important for assessing the overall safety profile of the product. If the product is still in the clinical trial phase, the section should include data on the patient exposure from the ongoing clinical trials. And this can be expressed in terms of the number of patients enrolled in the trial, the duration of exposure, and any specific subpopulations included in the trials. I think at this point in time, I would like to introduce Shruti Mehrotra, our next speaker, and she will be taking on the next sections of the PSUR. And before I invite Shruti to speak on her sections, I will just give her a brief introduction. Shruti Mehrotra is a highly experienced professional with over 15 years of experience in pharmacovigilance and clinical trials, and she is recognized for driving excellence in global operations, compliance, and safety regulations. She's an expert in inspection readiness, due diligence, and business development with proficiency in PV systems such as Argus, Medra, RSG, and QMS tools. She is skilled at collaborating with stakeholders, like she has held senior leadership positions, and she has worked in the QA teams to ensure organizational and regulatory success. She holds an MSc in clinical research with a specialization in PV and drug safety from Cranfield University. And she's committed to advancing pharmaceutical practices through quality-driven, innovative approaches. Over to Shruti.
Thank you, Dr. Miglani, and emphasizing on the objectives of PSUR being comprehensive, concise, and at the same time more crisp. Moving ahead, I'll go to section 6, which is data in summary tabulations. Next slide, please. Thank you. Aligning with the objectives of PSUR, or more broadly, if I talk, no, the previous slide. Thank you. Or more broadly, if I talk, for the matter of fact, for any aggregate report, I would resonate with Dr. Chopra's talk. These reports are intended to target analysis of cumulative safety information from a wide range of sources on a periodic basis. And in my opinion, the intended communication becomes easy if the data is visually crisp. Hence, tabular or graphical representation could be an ideal example depending upon the type of information. It would just enhance the meaning and its value. Section 6.1 is to reference information, which where we can mention the details like versions about the coding dictionary used. Section 6.2 and 6.3, the body of PSUR here should provide the background for the appendix detailing cumulative summary tabulations. For example, for section 6.2, any data omissions or maybe causality assessments, or maybe if the tabulations are blinded or unblinded, could be explained following additional describing information. Section 6.3, important to note is that this section should not provide any analysis or conclusions per se. Section 7. The overall expectation from section 7, including its subsections, is to put forth all identification, characterization, and quantification of safety hazards accounted in the reporting period, strengthening the safety profile of the drug. From clinical trials, both completed and ongoing, this section look forwards for important emerging safety findings. In long-term follow-up section, this is the area of focus for drugs with advanced therapy products like those of maybe cell therapy or tissue engineering. From new safety data related fixed combination, it is interesting to note that if the subjected medicinal product is also part of a fixed combination, or under development, then this section would also summarize the safety findings from the combination therapy and vice versa. Section 8, findings from non-interventional studies. So if the MAH has sponsored any non-interventional studies, which could be, say, for example, any observational or epidemiological or surveillance program or any registries, this section will summarize the impact of contributing studies on the risk-benefit assessment. Section 9 and 10, I would take both the sections together. Information on other clinical and non-clinical sources. This section would highlight details from any other clinical trials, which if MAH has come across, let's say it could be a meta-analysis or co-developed partners or from investigator-initiated studies. Highlighting section 9.2, information regarding medication errors. Well, the expectation is to summarize patterns of medication error or potential medication errors, even if not associated with adverse outcomes. This information supports the overall benefit risk evaluation of the drug. Section 11, which is literature. This section would summarize the new and significant safety findings relevant to the approved medicinal product that MAH becomes aware of. It could be from peer-reviewed literature or unpublished manuscript. Type of safety information that could be or should be included may comprise of pregnancy outcomes, including termination, use in pediatric population, compassionate use, lack of efficacy, asymptomatic overdose, abuse or misuse, medication errors, and important non-clinical safety results. Section 12, other periodic reports. Here there is an important consideration, as this section will apply only in certain circumstances concerning fixed combination products or products with multiple indications or formulations. So in this section, unless otherwise directed, the MAH should prepare one PSUR for single active. And if you are preparing multiple PSURs, then summarize the significant findings from other reports here, if not presented anywhere else. Section 13, lack of efficacy in controlled clinical trials. Information in this section is of prime importance for drugs which are indicated to prevent life-threatening illnesses. For example, if any anti-cancer drug exhibits lack of efficacy while used within approved or studied indication, it could reflect a significant risk to the treatment population. Section 14, late-breaking information. So late-breaking information is something that is coming to your knowledge while you are writing the PSUR, that is after the DLP. And interesting late-breaking information could be any significant changes proposed to the reference product information or any important safety signal adding any value or changing the safety evaluation of the product could be summarized here. Section 15, overview of signals, new or closed. Noteworthy is that this section is to provide high-level overview of signals that were evaluated and closed during the reporting period using both qualitative and or quantitative methodologies. Well, for our understanding, new signals are those which have been identified during the reporting period or if known before, have changed clinical significance. Ongoing are those which have been identified prior and are still under evaluation, while closed would be those which have completed evaluations within the reporting period. Section 16, signal and risk evaluation. The expectation from this section is to have a succinct summary of all the knowns with respect to signals. At this point in time, I would refer back to Dr. Miglani's talk and align us with the objectives of PSUR report once again. It kind of told us that we should not be duplicating information within sections. Well, therefore, it's valuable to note that while section 15 captures all the overview of signals, which comprise of information such as what was identified, when it was identified, and from where it was identified, Here in section 16, we provide details on the medical classification and evaluation of the signals, referencing the scientific interpretation of the available data, which is the risk evaluation. Subsections listed on the screen are tagged with what information should be followed under each section for reference. Section 17, benefit evaluation. This section, including all the subsections, would summarize the benefit evaluation while at baseline or maybe newly identified benefits. It could be characterized separately by factors such as indication, considering product with multiple indications, or population, or maybe route of administration as relevant. And then the subsection 17.3 would include integrated baseline and new information. Next slide, please. So actually, referring the evaluations from section 17.3 would support section 18, which is integrated benefit risk analysis for authorized indications, reminding us all again that the information should not be duplicated. So section 18.1 should provide a brief description of the medicinal need for the medicinal product in the approved indication and summarize alternatives. Section 18.2 to present evaluation of risk benefit profile by age indication. Section 19, which is conclusions and actions. So in very simple words, if I can summarize based on all that we talked, all the assessments and evaluations, there would be some conclusion, and based on the conclusion, we would have some actions proposals. This section would see all of that crux. The next slide provides you with a list of appendices which are added to the PSUR, concluding my presentation. At this time, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for investing your time, your active participation, and opening the floor for questions.
Thank you, Shruti. That was an excellent presentation, and we do have several questions. The first one I'm going to direct to you, Shruti, and it is, how does 21 CFR 314.80 address the handling of adverse experiences that are reported to the applicant through a licensed manufacturer or distributor? Who bears the primary regulatory reporting obligation?
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for that question. Well, the primary responsibility holder for fulfilling the pharmacovigilance obligation is the marketing authorization holder. However, now if you have distributors or co-license manufacturers, there could be two ways. Either you can have the systems or processes built in place so that they can communicate all these adverse reactions to the MAH, or they can also be reporting on the behalf of MAH, while there must be again documentation present to instate that the distributor or the licensed manufacturer are fulfilling the obligations on behalf of the MAH.
Thank you, Shruti. The second question is also a very good question, and I think Mike can take this. What is the regulatory treatment of lack of effect, adverse experiences, and payers under US FDA regulations? And why is this category often underreported in practice?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sharon. Indeed, a very good question. So under the US requirement 21 CFR 314.80, it explains that the failure to produce the expected pharmacological action, that is lack of efficacy, is actually classified as an adverse experience, and these kind of cases have to be included in the PADER. Like, they have to be included because they are categorized as adverse experience and product quality complaint both. So they have to be included in sections of the PADER, and they have to be reported as well to the US FDA. But similarly, there is certain drugs or certain conditions like for contraceptives or vaccines or for treatment of conditions or lack of efficacy for the life-threatening conditions. They in fact are required to be reported on a 15-day basis, and these again, if they are reported as a 15-day alert report, they will again be included in the payroll. Now, all these have to be included in summary tabulations as well. Now, another important, question which was asked is, why is this category often unreported in practice? Basically in practice, lack of efficacy is actually unreported because, like reporters or patients or healthcare professionals, they do not recognize or they do not consider this therapeutic failure as a reportable adverse event, so they do not generally report that. So that is the main reason of underreporting. But these cases, if reported, they have to be included in payroll depending on what kind of product for which lack of efficacy is being reported. Thank you, Sharon.
Well, thanks, Magda. A third question I think Sanjeev can answer. GVP Module 7 requires MAHs to maintain a quality system for PSUR preparation. What are the minimum elements of such a quality system, and what specific training obligations apply to staff involved in PSUR activities?
Sure, Sharon. I can take this question, and I think it's very important from audit perspective also. So GP Module 7 does talk about it quite a bit, and there can be a lot of things that can be required from a quality system perspective, like say written procedure, the SOPs. They must cover all the PSUR related activities, including data collection from all the sources, DLP management, signal detection, assessment, benefit risk evaluation. There should be clear designation of the responsibilities for PSURs, like authoring, medical review, the review by QPPV, and final sign-offs. So the QPPV ultimately, of course, has the ultimate oversight responsibility for PSUR accuracy and completeness. And then there should be documented, like a document management system ensuring version control, review history, and final approval records. And the responsible person of the QPPV, I mean, like for Europe, must ensure that all the staff performing the PSUR related activities are adequately qualified, experienced, and trained before they are doing any sort of activities. And during inspections, like by European authorities, national competent authorities routinely examine training records to verify that the staff who is basically doing the PSUR activities, they have kind of done their relevant trainings before like the DLP of the PSUR, in case they're involved in that. I hope this answers the question.
Okay. Thanks, Sanjeev. Our last question, under GVP Module 7, what specific obligations apply when an MAH identifies late-breaking information after the data lock point? How does this interact with the MAH's obligation for immediate reporting of urgent safety restrictions?
Sure, Sharon. Yeah, I can again take this question. I think it's a very good question as such. And practically, like as far as the late breaking information is concerned, what we practically do is kind of typically take the line listings maybe 3 to 4 weeks or like 2 weeks before the submission date. The idea is to just see that even though like we have taken a DLP which is 60 days before the submission date for practical purposes, we are not missing anything that is coming during this last 2-month period. And the main objective is to get that information, and if there is any significant safety concern, of course we have to highlight that in the report itself, even though it is coming after the DLP. And of course the other point that was mentioned in the question is the urgent safety restriction. So that is of course an independent thing. So if there is a kind of a late breaking information, say that represents an urgent safety concern, like say if there is a newly confirmed signal or a serious risk which requires immediate label change, so MH, of course, cannot wait for the PSUR submission to communicate. Of course, this will go into the PSUR, but in parallel, the action which is required for urgent safety decision will start occurring. So the MH must immediately notify the EMA and implement urgent safety restrictions. Like say if there is a DDL, the DA doc letter that needs to be sent. So all those things have to be done separately. I mean, like in parallel with the PSUR. That late breaking information will definitely go in the PSUR, but all those actions that have to be taken other than PSUR submission will also happen in parallel. So it's not like it is just going to be part of the PSUR process. So these are independent processes. They will happen in parallel. And so I think, Sharon, these are the questions, right, that we have?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
All right. So I think that.
Go ahead, Sanjeev.
No, I was just thinking, yeah. So if these are the questions, probably, yeah, then Sharon, we have covered all the things from our side. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and thank you for attending the webinar. Thanks for taking out time. We will be back soon with another topic. Keep tuned. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.